It's not really a secret that young people are quite miserable. And I don't mean just a little stressed or having a bad day. I mean there is this constant sadness over everything. The title says Gen Z, but honestly, millennials and even some of Gen Alpha know what I'm talking about. Of course, if you ask boomers, they will say that we're just being dramatic, but I think if you look at the last 20 years or so, there have been so many events that changed the world forever, and not in a good way. And looking at the state of especially Western countries, there are no signals that it will get better anytime soon. And first, I want to talk about how I noticed the gradual mood change among people of my age, and then I'll talk about the reasons behind it. So, for me personally, I wouldn't call this a depression, but I lived my life and still going through it in what you could call a constant state of melancholy. To give you an example of what that means, imagine being on a holiday in a very beautiful place and realizing that what you are experiencing is temporary and will never be a part of your actual life. So somehow, in one of the nicest places on earth, you manage to be sad every day around sunset. And it applies to all sorts of aspects in life, where you are just low-key sad, with no apparent cause. There is a nice book called Varieties of Melancholy, which describes this mindset quite well. And the reason I'm telling you all of this is because I've always been vocal about the state of mind. I've discussed it with numerous people of different ages ever since I was a teen. And in almost every case, the response has been somewhere between, well, that's fucking weird, and are you sure you're not depressed? And then, as I entered, I want to say, my late 20s, the reactions from people around my age and younger suddenly changed. Suddenly, a lot more people could relate to this feeling. And I wouldn't even call it melancholy. I think the vibe change is something way stronger than that. Everyone's just kinda dooming. So what happened? I was 13 when the 2008 financial crisis happened. And even though back then I was living in Eastern Europe, it was still a big deal. A lot of people lost jobs and were even forced to sell their properties. Now, I've been living in the UK for the past 10 years and this country hasn't even recovered. The wages been stagnant since 2008, as well as GDP if you account for the fact that the government is tweaking the way it's calculated to make it look better than it is. So, obviously the rising cost of living, the housing market and the wages that can't keep up all make it way harder for regular people to start their adult life. And although America been doing a bit better, it's not really all that different. When the average rent is 60% of the average salary, moving out of your parents' house is simply not an option for most, and we all know how fun it is to live with your parents. Now, for the last 10 years we've also been constantly told that the world is about to end. There's this whole climate thing where it's your fault for using a straw, or a bag, or a car, or AC, and I made a separate video on it that goes a bit further into detail, but in my opinion it's nothing more but constant fear-mongering and victim blaming. People who actually have the power and money to address the issue couldn't care less, yet we are told to always sacrifice our quality of life for the planet. And even climate change aside, it always feels like the Third World War is about to start, with constant conflicts and everyone having nukes these days and whatnot. And when you think about who actually gives the order to fire them, it's just a bunch of 80-year-old lunatics who will die soon anyway. Why would they care about your future? I can totally see Trump or Putin YOLOing it for shits and giggles just before they pass away. Obviously the pandemic has to make the list as well. Besides exposing how bad our governments are at handling economics and turning the wealth inequality gap into Grand Canyon, it obviously left us all isolated. And yeah, the lockdowns lasted only a few months, but the aftermath, dude. We couldn't come back to universities or schools for years and everything became online. It's pretty hard to make friends in the modern world as it is, but then if you take away the natural environment for people to meet and socialize, it's no wonder everyone feels lonely. I'm quite lucky in this sense because I went through 4.5 years of university before it all happened, and for the next 3 I didn't even go in, but I know plenty of people who just started their degrees in 2019 and they got to experience campus life for like 5 months and that was it. If the same happened to me, I am confident in saying that I would make only a fraction of friends that I made throughout my studies. And chances are these friendships wouldn't even last either because, let's be real, you wouldn't keep in touch with someone you just met. And the whole online thing as well. Businesses realize that you don't actually need to be in the office to work in a lot of cases, and naturally, they started outsourcing everything to fucking India. It's so common in tech now, especially. They don't even care about the project quality. A lot of these CEOs just look for ways to save money. You add AI on top and it's the same story. Depending on the profession, we are either already being replaced or we are told that it will happen anytime soon. And of course, that doesn't fill anyone with optimism about their career prospects. And that describes a lot of the Western world quite well, I think. A lot of it is about cutting costs at the expense of customers. And of course, that's always been a thing, but it feels like the knob's been tweaked all the way to the max these last few years, and we are also losing jobs on top of it. And then you look at what's historically been important for humans. You know, having your own place, having a family, leaving a legacy, an offspring. All of that is such a distant dream for so many. In 1970, the percentage of 30-year-olds who were both married and owned a home was 50%. Then it was 33% in 2000, and it's 12% now. And regardless of where your priorities are, that is a disgusting statistic. I don't want to have a kid. I made a video on that, but most people I know want to have at least one. I'm sure they feel great about it. And I think this goes hand in hand with the loss of traditional gender roles as well. Don't get me wrong, I'm only for women having more options. If you want to have a career, if you don't want to pump out kids, be my guest. But let's be real, it's not really an option anymore. It's a lie that's been disguised as a feminist movement, and now we find ourselves in a situation where both men and women have to work 40 hours a week just to survive. Don't tell me that an average woman has an option to be a housewife these days. They're not really empowered, are they, when being Gen Z boss in a mini is a question of survival rather than a choice. And it's a matter of time until women realize it themselves, but I think this loss of traditional roles hurts men way more. We were not sold any lies. We were never excited about going to work in the first place, because historically it's always been about coming home, having someone there waiting for you, and it made that grind worth it. Now you come to a place that you can't call home, you don't own it, no one's waiting for you, not even a fucking cat, cause most places don't allow pets, and many men start asking themselves, what is it all for? And then you look at how young people cope. Doom scrolling, gaming, weed, gooning. And listen, none of these activities are inherently bad in my opinion, but they're all quite isolating, and especially as a coping mechanism, very addicting. At their core, they're not really solving any issues. It's not the same as going to therapy, spending some time with friends, or even just going for a walk, which gives you an opportunity to think about stuff, to talk about stuff, even if it's just to yourself. Instead, they redirect your attention to something else entirely, which only makes it harder to face the reality next time. That's not how you deal with problems and emotions. The strategy can't be to just not think about it for as long as you can. The last thing I want to mention is glorification of mental health issues. It's almost like there is a desire to be sad. Our generation found something tragically beautiful in having depression, ADHD, autism, and OCD. Everyone has something these days. And look, there is definitely a mental health crisis going on, but at the same time, we became so desensitized to it. We joke about it, we talk about it like it's nothing, it's constantly in your face. And I am guilty of that myself. The other day I was talking to my manager about my plans for the weekend, and I said something along the lines of, yeah, I will probably just go to the gym and then kill myself after that, expecting a laugh or a smile, but I forgot that he's like 60 years old and you should have seen the look on his face. Only then it hit me that actually maybe it's not normal to be saying such things so casually. But anyway, I plan to make a separate video on this, so I will not go too much into detail, but of course I had to mention it today as well. So yeah, that's where we are at. A generation living in this weird twilight zone where we're not completely hopeless, but we're definitely not enjoying it either. Everybody feels like a shadow is hanging over them. Let me know how you feel about this in the comments, and if you think I missed some important topics, let me know. And as always, do with this information what you will. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.